I know we have been having some nice weather here. I hope you are having great weather where you are as well. I want to make sure you and your Jeep are prepared as we are moving towards this amazing weather. Think of it just like we spring clean our house, we need to make sure to do our Jeep spring cleaning. So don't worry, we're not going to be talking about house cleaning. We're jumping right in to spring cleaning for our Jeep. We want to be ready for the trail riding season. This is going to help set you up for this entire year so that you can go out there with confidence and enjoy everything that you are doing. Take extra care once a year. And I feel like spring is the best time for me to be motivated, excited, think about doing my once a year really good Jeep spring cleaning, Jeep service, Jeep once over, putting some eyes on everything, hands on everything, making sure that our Jeep is just as ready and prepared as we are. Make sure that all of your routine maintenance and service is up to date. Making sure that you have taken it in for scheduled appointments or done your routine maintenance yourself. And this includes brake pads and rotors are in good shape. We want to make sure that we put eyes on everything at least once a year. It's like a very thorough, like we keep an eye on our Jeep all the time, see if, something's wet that's not normally wet. So there's fluid somewhere, oil somewhere, cracks. We do keep an eye on our Jeep, but this is going to be our thorough. Think of this as your thorough once a year, really going over and through your Jeep. Look at your brake pads. What condition are your brake pads and your rotors in? Are they in good shape? How much wear is on them? How much life are you going to have left out of them before you need to go ahead and have some service done? That way you can grab your planner. Probably I'm at 50% wear on my pads, or ooh, I'm not going to have much longer on these pads. So make sure that way you can put it in your schedule so you're prepared for it. So you don't forget, you're not on a long road trip and you're like, oh, I think I need new brake pads when you're out and about having a great time. I just got new brake pads on the back of my JKU. This is my springtime. I'm doing the exact same things, going through my Jeep as well, making sure she is all ready to hit the season hard. Pretty worn, so I said, you know what? We have her taken apart. We're doing our yearly kind of overhaul on her, looking at everything, going through everything. Go ahead and replace the brake pads. That way I don't have to think about it or worry about it as we're getting ready to be doing things. U-joints, serviced or replaced. Some U-joints are serviceable, some are not. Make sure to check out your U-joints. You don't want to be out on the trail and have an issue with a cracked, broken, worn out U-joint. If it is on its last leg, you want to go ahead and have it serviced now or swapped out and replaced now before you're out on the trail, and then it becomes a much bigger issue if you break a U-joint. Another thing to think about is belts and hoses. If you are coming out of winter, depending on where in the country you live, it can be harder on these things, especially when you think about rubber and plastic, and with freezing temperatures, in case there was any kind of condensation, if it froze, there could be cracks, could be brittle. This is this perfect time as you're starting to move in to kind of do your, hey, how is everything after the winter, depending on your weather. Make sure that you have all your belts and your hoses checked as well. Make sure they're in good condition. There's no cracks. It's not dry rotting. Everything looks good so that you feel prepared as you are going out there. Check your battery and your terminal cables. Corrosion on those terminal cables where they connect to your battery, if they get corroded, they start to have a hard time getting power, the charge, connection. That is something, make sure you check that. Notice if it looks like you're starting to get corrosion issues on those battery terminals. Go ahead and address that and fix that now, coming into spring. Thermostat and your radiator. We are going to be going into starting spring. Temperatures are going to get warmer. And then we're going to roll right into summer. Again, depending on where in the country you live, You're talking about high temperatures, talking about heat, running your AC inside your vehicle. So you want to make sure that your thermostat and your radiator are functioning and working properly. You also want to make sure, depending on what kind of conditions your winter conditions are, that you want to make sure that your radiator does not need to be flushed and have a service done on it as well going into this warmer time of year. Coolant and lines, that goes right along with that. Make sure that your lines look good. Make sure that, again, everything is tight, everything is secured. It doesn't look like there's rust, it doesn't look like there's cracks, dry rotting, anything that could have occurred through the long winter period. So that if there are any issues, you can go ahead and address those, get those fixed now before the temperatures start to rise and it becomes a bigger problem, especially if you have wheel spacers. This is a great time to check all of your lug nuts on your wheels and also to check wheel spacer bolts. Make sure everything looks like the threads are good, all your lug nuts are tight, wheel spacer bolts are tight. I hate to say it, but make sure no lug nuts have disappeared. If you are, that you can get those replaced so you are all ready to start out for this year. Tire pressure and condition of your tires. Remember, we talked about checking your tire pressure going into winter when we were talking about how winter weather can affect things with our Jeep. Remember, the tire pressure, if you have air, is going to change a little bit based on the temperatures. You want to make sure to check your tire pressure as well to know where your tires are at going into spring, as well as the condition of the tires. What does your tread look like? How much life do you feel like you have left in your tires? Pay attention to that. A mental note, or if you're like, ooh, I'm probably going to make it a couple more months and then I need to get new tires, or oh, I'll probably make it through, like 6 more months and then I need to think about it. Put it in your planner, in your schedule, so you don't forget, because it can be easy to forget things, especially as life takes over. We get busy, but that way, again, you are preparing yourself to know when you need to go ahead and do that. Make sure that you are up to date on your service, your oil changes, and your oil filter, especially going into spring and summer if you're going to be traveling, if you're going to be taking off-road trips, as well as your air filter. If, depending on if you have aftermarket intake, like cold air intake, if you have stock, depending on what you have, when you pull your cover, pull out your air filter, if it looks disgusting, if it's dirty, if it has particles stuck in there, go ahead and replace your air filter now going in to spring. Something to think about is your windshield wipers and your washer fluid. I never think about this until I can't see as I'm driving down the road. Just check out the condition of your windshield wipers. Look at how they're looking. Does it look like they need to be replaced? Another thing, are they unsecured? Does it look like there's any damage, any cracks, anything you need to replace with your windshield wipers? And then pop the hood and check your washer fluid. Make sure that it is nice and full. I know for us, being in the South, with this beautiful spring weather, the bugs start to come out. I use a lot more washer fluid during spring and summer just with the amount of bugs I end up with on my windshield, as well as your lights and your bulbs. Now, it's a little different with the LED, like the aftermarket LED halos. Some of the aftermarket LED lights have lifetime warranties on them, but still look, make sure there's not cloudiness for your headlights. Same thing with your taillights. Make sure there's no moisture in there. They're not holding water. They're not cloudy. They look nice and clean. Turn them on. Make sure that they are working. They're bright. You can see. Make sure your taillights are bright. Just go ahead and check all of your lights out as well to make sure everything is working correctly. Now, sway bar bushings and sway bar links and disconnects. This is a good time. I know it's kind of hidden, but you can see over here the sway bar link in this picture. This is again another good time to take a look at your sway bar bushings and links and disconnects to make sure that everything looks like it is in good working order. It doesn't look like anything is dry rotting. You don't see any cracks in your actual sway bar, in your linkage. There's no damage. And another thing is to look at, if you're going to be disconnecting your sway bars, look and make sure that there's not a lot of rust on your link disconnects, that you're going to have to be removing the nut and bolt if you don't have a quick disconnect. These are things to look at ahead of time before you end up at a trail ride, getting ready to go out on the trail. You're under there trying to break them loose and they're rusted, and you don't want to break a bolt or a nut if they're rusted and you're trying to break them loose. This is a great time to just put eyes on all that, hit them with some WD-40, go ahead and swap out anything that looks like it is rusted at home before you head out to travel and to go have some fun. Make sure that you have done your differential service as well. You need to make sure to go ahead and have your differential service, your differential fluid flushed, refilled, everything clean, new fluid in there, ready to go, new seal for the year, so that you don't have to worry about, oh man, I hope my seal doesn't leak, or oh, I hope the fluid still is good in my differential. I recommend, if you're going to be trail riding a lot, especially in mud, water crossings, make sure you do your differential service once a year so that you know those important gears. And if you have a locker or limited slip, you know everything has everything it needs to continue to work properly. This is also a great time. Pull out your recovery equipment, pull out your bag, take everything out, put eyes on it. Make sure your snatch block isn't rusted. Make sure it's still moving. Make sure your straps are in good shape. There's no frays, tearing, any damage done to any of the straps. Make sure your D-rings, you can open and close them. Again, make sure there's no damage, no rust on any of the equipment that you will need for your recovery gear. All straps are in good condition as well. Same thing with your winch line and your hook, depending on if you have a factory hook, if you have an aftermarket, like a Factor 55. I know Smittybilt makes an aftermarket. Whatever your hook is on the end of your winch line, this is a good time to go ahead, put eyes on your winch line, make sure there's no frays, no damage, it's not melted if you have synthetic. Even if you keep a cover over your winch, you need to pull it off and put eyes on and inspect your line and your hook. Also, make sure your winch still is in working condition. Go ahead, turn it on. If you have a wireless remote, use that, or use your plug and use your remote. Make sure that your winch is still getting power and it is still working correctly. Nuts and bolts. I recommend to check all of the nuts and bolts on your Jeep. I know that sounds like a big chore, but this also helps you to know what tools you need for your Jeep, and it also helps you to know what different size tools you are going to need in specific areas on your Jeep. Also helps to make sure everything is still tight and secure. Look for any leaks or fluid on any parts or components. So look to make sure everything is dry. Look at your front axle. Go over and look where the front axle comes over to your wheel so you can make sure your seals look good. Just put eyes on all the different components under your Jeep to make sure you don't see any fluid or leaks, so you can get those fixed if you need to. And also look for any rust or damage as you're under your Jeep, putting eyes on all the different components. Just also be looking for any rust or any damage that you do see on your Jeep. For safety equipment, make sure that your first aid kit is replenished So go ahead, open your first aid kit, look inside, make sure that if you've taken Band-Aids out of there or you've used things out of your first aid kit, make sure to go ahead and replenish that. Make sure you have all the supplies that you will need inside your first aid kit. Check the date on your fire extinguisher. If you have a fire extinguisher in your Jeep, make sure to check the date on that. Shake it really well. I know we've talked about fire extinguishers, depending on which fire extinguisher you have, making sure that you shake your fire extinguisher at least once a month and you don't just strap it to your Jeep and then just leave it there and don't think about it again. Also, like I talked about for the windshield wipers fluid, make sure that your bug spray is replaced. I feel the same way about bug spray as I do about sunscreen. I want to make sure it's going to work. I know there's different ideas on bug spray, how long it'll last. Even if I still have some bottles in my Jeep, I will take those out and I will put new bug spray in. I love the little travel bottles. I'll get 3 of those so I can put them in different places. They'll fit like in the pouch in the behind the front seats in my Jeep. So I know I have them in multiple places if I need bug spray. And then I do the same thing with the sunscreen. Throw any of the sunscreen away that was in there from last year, replenish that with new sunscreen. And again, I like to get the little travel size so it's easier to store in my Jeep, but I know I have it if I ever need it. Make sure your handheld radio or CB or both are working and functioning properly. You're kind of just going through everything you're going to need, making sure everything is in good working order so that when you need it, you know it is going to work and you don't end up getting somewhere and be like, oh man, it's not working, or oh man, it's not holding a charge. So make sure to check your handheld radio as well as your CB. Also, do a good spring cleaning of your Jeep itself. That includes the engine compartment, the undercarriage, and the wheel wells. Make sure that you really clean your Jeep. And again, especially depending on where you live in the country, what you have been driving on through the winter, make sure you do a really good cleaning of your Jeep. Biggest thing is just remember to make sure that you don't ever spray water directly into your air intake, and watch out for any of the electronic computer and components that are underneath the hood of your Jeep. So those are just things to think about when you go to clean it. Use your spring once over to do a good double check before you start out to enjoy this Jeep season. This is going to make you feel prepared. It's going to make you feel confident that you know that you are ready. You know you have kind of done everything you can to make sure your Jeep is prepared as well, so that you can have the best time that you can have enjoying yourself outside with your Jeep without worrying if everything is going to be functioning the way it is supposed to. If you want to jumpstart and jump in, kickstart your spring for you, jump over to LadyJeepers.com, take a look at the education that we have available for you, the courses, the information, as well as our upcoming events. And keep an eye out. We are always posting things on the page and in the group to let you know what we have going on so you don't miss anything. Thank you for spending some time with me and thinking about our Jeep spring cleaning to get ourselves excited, ready, prepared for just fun, excitement, and whatever journeys we have ahead of us as the weather starts to get better.